You really can't understate how important Avatar is. It's one of the big starts to story-based shows, one of the first and most clear instances of anime influences in Western animation, some of the most well-thought-out characters in the world in anything I've ever seen, all things everyone has said before. Everything you can say about Avatar has been said a million times. I've been wanting to make an Avatar video all the way back since 2020 when I started actually doing this usually. The problem is that that's the same year Avatar got added to Netflix. Before that, Avatar is mostly just known by animation Nickelodeon fans and 2000s kids. It was extremely well respected in those fields, but odds are the average person would know about it like they likely would with SpongeBob, For Our Parents, or some of the 90s Nick shows. But it feels like the very second it was added to Netflix, all heck broke loose. Suddenly, everyone was talking about this show. I feel like if you kidnapped 100 people and tied them together and threw them into your basement and they made an Avatar reference, most would get it. There was a ton of merchandise suddenly for the show, generally better marketing. If Nick did anything involving itself as a brand, you can guarantee Avatar will be there. And of course, the second blow is in the water. Every single channel jumped at a chance to make a video on the series, now it's relevant again. Think of a moment from the show. There's at least 3 essays on it. So because of that, I just kind of gave up on ever doing a dedicated Avatar video. It's a fantastic show and a large part of my childhood, but I just can't add anything. That is, until something dropped in my lap. A lot of somethings. So not only did content creators realize that Avatar is back, Nick did too. It seems like right after it was made obvious that Avatar is big again, we suddenly got a ton of new announcements for the series. New games, movies, shows, comics, novels, the whole shebang. I'm 23 years old, I still have no idea what shebang means. Some of these products are things people want. An adult endgame film, a focus on Kyoshi, the next Avatar in the Earth's Kingdom, and a lot more. But that's a key, isn't it? A lot more. After Korra ended in 2015, the series was pretty much just radio silence. Now we've got a ton of new material for the series, almost all at once. That leads me to ask, is this too much? Nickelodeon is known for beating SpongeBob to death with all of their constant spin-offs and films and advertising and stuff like that. Is Avatar doing to be the same? I want to look through all this new stuff and realize and see if it's fated to be this way. This is Nickelodeon, so we all know the answer. Before talking about what the series is becoming, I feel like it's the most important to talk about the first time Avatar got any attention after it ended. Legend of Korra. There's a couple ways to tackle this show. First and most obviously, I should mention my thoughts on it. I'll get more into this when I make the top 35 Nick shows, but on its own, I like Korra, but not as much as others do. I think all the villains are extremely strong. The animation is as amazing, if not better than Avatar. Varric is the absolute GOAT. Overall, it's a solid show, but also, I just think it kind of fails to live up to its predecessor. It's definitely a tough act to follow, so I get it. But still, I don't hold it as highly as some others do. Also Season 2. The other thing people tend to bring up is how it's one of the worst treated Nicktoons in existence. It's almost certainly gained this reputation because of its popularity. There's tons of shows that are treated far worse, but I don't want to act like Korra wasn't constantly fricked over. The show was originally meant to be a miniseries, but managed to become a full one. Unfortunately, Season 2 was released on Friday nights, one of the worst times to air new episodes. It took a long time to air after Season 1, and received little to no advertising. Say what you want about this season, but that was the death sentence for a decently popular show. Season 3 took some time to air as well, and was also fairly under-advertised, but there's less time between 8 and 2 than 2 and 3. Most likely because of Nick's Mexican branch leaking some episodes. Halfway through the season, they decided to stop broadcasting them and instead make them online exclusive. And this was true for the final season as well. Even worse, the decision was not told to any of the staff beforehand. I feel like it's safe to say, if Korra didn't have such a vocal fanbase, it would have gotten the axe far earlier into its run, like many other Nick shows. But hey, executive managing aside, the show still manages to be one of the most iconic Nick shows ever, and one of their most well-loved shows. It and Loud House are the only 2010s era Nick shows Nick even ever acknowledges. One day they'll understand our love. I do feel like this kind of stings though. Yeah, we'll frick with the show constantly, but now we realize it's popular, we give it a ton of attention. It's the same with Invader Zim. The creator was constantly pressured due to the show being too dark. It was canceled early in its second season, yet because of a strong cult fandom, it's like the only show that still receives merchandise nowadays, alongside SpongeBob and Avatar. Not that I'm complaining. Don't put the kiss it. The show still manages to be brought up quite frequently nowadays. Even if 90% of that is people talking about Korrasami. But hey, at least Korra is still beloved now, right? Well, there's a lot of detractors to the show. There are far more fans, but the haters are quite vocal. While some reasons are stupid, like the existence of women, I have seen a take that this undermines a lot of Avatar. Some of these reasons are also stupid. Let's say the progression of tech doesn't make sense. It does. There's 70 years between these shows. Time has changed, old man. But others, honestly, I can see it. Tough. one of the most lovable characters in the show due to her reckless, no-order approach, is a cop. If you told me to name 100 jobs I could see Toph taking, any form of government authority wouldn't even cross my mind. Heck, she found the Force. I'm sorry, but a character who's all about breaking the rules wouldn't become a police officer. There's a few retcons on things people didn't even have a problem with. How the original Benders were dragons, badger moles, sky bison, and the moon, but now it's a lion turtles. But the absolute worst part is what they did with Aang. Aang and Katara ended up having 3 children, but only one was an airbender. As such, he kind of ended up ignoring his other kids. I'm sorry, but you don't have one of the most optimistic and kind characters in all fiction be a deadbeat dad. He wouldn't do that. Katara wouldn't do that. I don't care if I would also ignore 2 of my children if the other one became J.K. Simmons. That's just not Aang. There's some more, but I do feel like this is important to show, even with a similar team and less time between projects, Nick is still fully capable of messing with the original series and what's great about it. While Korra, I feel like, still manages to get out pretty decent. That brings up if the slew of new material can be as good. So I feel like I should first cover the most obvious problem with all these new things: oversaturation. I can't understate how weird it is to go from nothing since you released the final Korra episode to suddenly getting all this new material. Nick basically only has 3 brands nowadays: the 90s, SpongeBob, and now Avatar. I'm sure they'll catch on to 2000s nostalgia soon enough and milk that to death, but for now, it's those. 90s stuff really just kind of stays to merchandise, alongside various TV blocks and a small handful of reboots. SpongeBob, though, is what they really milked. This isn't new news. Everyone knows SpongeBob is, hands down, the most beaten horse in animation. Even Disney's conservative with Mickey Mouse. But SpongeBob has 3 movies with a 4th on the way, and 3 shows that are all basically the exact same, alongside being on air for far longer than it really should have. The sudden amount of attention Avatar has gotten people to ask if it's going to be the next SpongeBob. And honestly, I think that thought is fair. If it's true though, well, I'm not sure. I think it's about time we finally look into what's coming out. I won't go over everything, since I don't have a real problem or thing to add to it, like the game account recently, but then there's the stuff they all have upcoming. Let's start with something that was announced even before Avatar hype: the live-action Netflix show. Announced back in 2018, the series immediately got mixed reception, but most of the negative reactions were just people scared that it could be a repeat of the Shyamalan movie. That's not a good reason to write the show off. The creators leaving the show is though. Listen, it can still be good without the input of the creators, but they listed creative differences and not liking the way Netflix was taking the show as a reason why they left. That's extremely vague, but isn't a good sign. Apparently it's supposed to be more adult, which I have no idea what that means in this context. Also, a lot has changed in 5 years. Netflix lost a lot of goodwill they had, and while it's mostly from bad business decisions, that also comes from some of their exclusives being kind of stinky, including some of their live-action adaptations. It's apparently scheduled for this year, so we can only wait. Something of note is that Nick has made an entire studio exclusively for Avatar content, which does raise some concerns, mostly, again, overexposure. But as for what they have set, honestly, I'm interested. Some of these are things fans have wanted for a long time. Kyoshi getting some focus finally. A show about the next Avatar on cycle, who's an earthbender. A film about Korra taking place after the show. A film about Zuko as a Fire Lord. And what seems to be the first film in the line, a film about the adult Aang gang. All these are highly requested. I think they all could work depending on how they're handled. Kyoshi is one I'm the least worried about. They already have a solid foundation with our Shadow and Rise of Kyoshi novels, plus it being a prequel about a pre-established character, probably won't freak up too much. So I think this will probably be good. Next Avatar is one that I think has the most potential, being completely new. Maybe they can even advance the world more, building off of what Korra did. I'm interested, but we really don't know anything about it, so I can't say much. The Korra film I don't think is super necessary. I think the show wrapped up nicely, but if they can give Korra and Sami more than a minute of kind of vaguely shot romantic interactions with each other, I do kind of blame Korra for the awful state animation fandoms are. We're hyper obsessed with shipping more than the actual show, so hopefully they can make the ship have some more actual weight on screen. Again, cautiously optimistic, but I do need some more information. Fire Lord Zuko I don't think needs a full film. I think just a short or being touched on in the Aang Gang film is really all you need, but hey, Zuko is easily the most popular character in the series. Might as well give him some focus. This is one I'm most worried for, but it could be good. The Aang Gang is one I'm the most personally interested in. I really want to see what happens to these guys after the series. Maybe they can try to smooth out the weirdness that Korra introduced in regards to the old characters, so it's not so out of the ordinary. If it ended here, I think most people would be fine. But there was a straw that broke the camel elephant's back, and that was a Azula comic book, Azula in the Spirit Temple. Now Azula is a beloved character, obviously the most popular in the series after Zuko. So you would think people would be ecstatic about a new book on her, but the problem comes up when it's said she might be redeemed. This has been, for the longest time, a hotly debated topic in the fandom. if she should be redeemed or not. The show is actually going to have an arc where she was, but it didn't end up panning out. Azula in the show revels in her villainy. She admits that she's a monster, she freaks out when Katara forgives her, and even Iroh, arguably the nicest character in the whole series, says she's insane and must be taken down.
I know what you're gonna say. She's my sister and I should be trying to get along with her.
No, she's crazy and she needs to go down.
Part of the reason why Sony like her is because she can so easily be redeemed, but she's not. It makes her all the more tragic. Most shows would redeem Azula, but Avatar deciding to keep her evil while letting her go too cartoonishly far in that evil just makes the show more special. Plus, she's a clear inverse of Zuko. They have the same parents, but everything else about them is the exact opposite. Redeeming her would backtrack on all of that. I don't think this comic is dead on arrival, but it's got a lot of legwork. Overall, I don't really know what to think about all this new stuff. They could be good, they could ruin the series, it's too early to say. I hope the best, but while most of these do have promise, I can't shake the feeling that it's all too much at once. Yes, there'll be a year or two in between each film and series, but still, the absolute 0 to 100 approach they have for these is enough to make me worried. Especially knowing his history of screwing things over, intending to milk stuff to death, and yet still milking them even further after that. Long ago, the four nations lived in harmony. That is, until the evil sponge attacked. He called me rude words. Then he killed my entire family. So he's not all bad.
The boulder's over his conflicted feelings, and now he's ready to bury you in a rock-a-land.